Well, let's do this. First of all, welcome to the first Seavine panel discussion, um, where we have seven incredible, experienced symbol techs to spread their symbol gospel to all of you. Um, my name's Chelsea. I'll be emceeing today. We also have Carly Belknap, who works for Seavine. You guys probably saw a lot of great communication from her, and she will be moderating all of this. Um, we had something like 100 questions submitted from 80 different people. We picked kind of our favorite ones that we felt like our panelists could answer best and that sort of covered as many topics as possible. We're going to zoom in on certain symbol topics. We will look at the big picture of the symbol community as a whole, um, and just kind of go from there. Before we get started, Carly, do you want to say anything before we have everyone introduce themselves?
Yeah, nothing too specific. Super excited. I think this will be a really cool event. And hopefully, too, we'll get to do some more like this in the future with some different people as well.
For sure. Yeah, we had over 20 people apply to be on the panel, so we definitely intend to do a round two after this. So, okay, well, without further ado, we are going to have the panelists give some intros on themselves. I'll call you guys out if you want to unmute yourselves. Let's start with you, Xavier.
All right. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Hi, I'm Xavier Brackett. I currently teach RCC. It's my fourth year there. Some other groups I've taught was my old high school, Torrance High, La Quinta High, uh, Gar High School. Did some Mandarins in 2018 and some Vessel 19 and 20. So yeah,
Nice. And you reside in Southern California.
good old Torrance, California. It's not on fire, so I'm happy. We're good right now.
That makes me happy too. Uh, Sweet. Maybe we just go coast to coast. So, Polly, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Polly Dimmock. I currently teach with Girls March, our seasonal camps for girls and non-binary percussion students. We had our first ever. Well, I'm the new Cymbal Tech with Girls March as of a couple summers ago, which is really exciting. So thank you to Rachel Taylor for bringing me on and bringing a whole new avenue to the percussion panel at Girls March. I taught previously at another high school here. I live in the Bay Area, but I'm from Southern California. Um, I was X's student in 2019 at Vessel. Um, I've marched previously at a lot of groups, so but about 5 years of drum corps and 3 or 4 of indoor. So yeah.
Oh, flex on them. You gotta tell them where you marched.
I marched at Incognito on bass drum in 2015 and 16. I started playing cymbals at Gold in 2017. I marched at Vessel Indoor for 2018 and 2019, Pacific Crest in 2018, Santa Clara Vanguard in 2019, RCC in 2020, and I would have aged out at Vanguard in 2020 as well. Would have.
Yeah, yeah, isn't that a shame? But very impressive marching resume. Heading north, Joshua Madrid.
Yeah, hello everybody. Josh Madrid, resident old person, I think, in this chat. I think I have quite a few years on most of the panel, which is fine. Representing the 90s, marched Blue Knights in the 1900s when they actually still had a symbol line. We had a real good time. Got taught by Ralph Hardiman, and that was the coolest thing ever, was getting handwritten beats from Ralph Hardiman. That was kind of rad. Went to Northland High School. If any of you know, like ancient WGI lore before there was tarps on the floor and stuff, that was a good time. Taught a bunch of high school, marched Mystique, marched quads there. Studied teaching all over the place. Moved to Portland, Oregon, where I'm currently living. Taught the drum corps up here, Oregon Crusaders, RIP. Taught the indoor group OC indoor for 10 years, and that was a good time. A lot of good kids came from that. And then been judging up here and abroad for about 12 years now as well. So just kind of everything. And then now, as of last fall, I was working with the marching band right down the street where my daughter now is a baritone player. That's how old I am. My band life cycle has morphed all the way back around to working with the band that my daughter is in. So good times. That's me.
Nice. Mason, we're gonna pick your geographical location from where you're from, not where you're living.
Where I'm from. Well, I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, but I currently live in Dayton, Ohio. Name's Mason. I currently teach the Cold Strum and Bugle Corps for the summer, and then in the indoor, I teach 4 different drum lines: Cap City World, Cap City 2, Kettering Fairmont, and Beaver Creek High School. So I have my plate full with my scholastic and independent groups. I've also helped out at Centerville High School and the Madison Scouts Drum and Bugle Corps. So a fair amount of places. Oh, and I marched Rhythm X and the Colts for a long time.
He sure did. And he's also an intern for WGI this winter.
Currently full time, just got a full time position today.
Oh, hey, congrats.
Brand new, yep. A new role
Nice.
made at WGI for me. So it's kind of cool.
Love
More to
it.
come from that. If you put on a wristband, I probably counted it and put it in the box for you.
He said he can get us free wristbands. I heard him. He said it. Just kidding.
Maybe.
Uh, sweet. Okay, David, you're next.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is David. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I currently, for the past couple years, I've been working with various scholastic cymbal lines across the metro Atlanta area. I currently work with Alpharetta High School and Decatur High School. Before then, I taught the Atlanta Quest Independent World Cymbal line from about 2016 through about 2020, going into 2022. Before that, I marched 3 years with Atlanta Quest on the cymbal line, and I did 3 years with Spirit of Atlanta in the horn line, actually. And then I did my age out for a little bit on that cymbal line as well until I got injured, but it was still a very good experience.
Got an I&E medal.
Got an I&E medal.
That's right. All right, Jerry, you're up.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. This is pretty cool. I think I see a few of my past students here in the participants. So, my name is Jerry. From California. I live in Florida. I have taught cymbals for a couple decades now, primarily at Escambia High School for about 15 years. Many high schools across the Gulf Coast, University of South Alabama, the Florida State University cymbal line. I marched with Southwind Drum and Bugle Corps and Music City Mystique. Also taught Southwind Spirit cymbal line, and I'm a media specialist for Seavine. So all the things you see on the Instagram account usually go through my hands at some point or another. Oh, and as well as Rhythm X this season, doing some of their graphic design and some of their media stuff as well. So I think that's a
Heck
short,
yeah.
sweet version.
That's the nicest way of saying I've taught a million years on a million different cymbal lines. Okay, last but not least, Jaden.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. My name is Jaden, located in Fairfax, Virginia. Super excited to be with you all. Right now, I'm teaching at George Mason Indoor, also teaching at Crossman over the summer. And prior teaching experience, I've taught Music City for 2 years and also taught at South County High School. And then in terms of marching experience, I was at George Mason from 18 to, if you want to count COVID, 2021 with Carly, and aged out at X in 22. Super excited to be here with you all and ready to answer some questions.
Yeah, so as you guys can tell, we tried to pick people from different backgrounds, different experiences. We have every class of WGI represented from Scholastic A to Independent World. Um, this panel very humbly gave their resume, but we have people who are judges and designers and visual caption heads and content creators, and obviously teachers, and are just super passionate about cymbals. And they've given back to the cymbal community in more ways than one. And that's why we have them here today for the first one ever. So we're going to jump into questions. These questions were all submitted by people who RSVP'd. Um, all of our panelists are going to answer a couple questions each, and then we'll kind of see where we're at on time. So we'll start with you, Xavier. The first question we're going to ask you that was submitted was, what criteria do you use to judge an audition? And what are some strategies you have to recruit cymbal players?
All right. So I have to give a little context in terms of the auditions, because currently we do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday audition, no callbacks. And there's a lot of moving parts to it. So there's a section piece, which is with your section. There's an ensemble piece, which is like a little mini drill with the rest of the battery. You do a Vig piece, and I think that's it. And you perform it all on Sunday in front of everybody. So all the pit people who are auditioning, battery, staff, so on and so forth. So that's kind of the context of like a lot of what I look for. The one thing I do, or a couple things I look for symbol wise, is the main one is like just control of the instrument. Can they move it well? Is a cymbal moving them, or are they moving the cymbal? I feel like that's a pretty easy tell on like how experienced a player can be. And obviously there could be a lot of context into that, but that's usually a main one I look for. Um, Also just like, can you move and play? Do you have two left feet? Like that kind of stuff. Those are like the two main things on at least symbol related that I look for. The stuff that's more like not physical, it's more so like, can you learn quickly? We have Friday to Sat or Friday to Sunday. How well can you grow between those days? Do you have high highs but low lows? How consistent are you? Confidence is a big one. I got cut in 2015 from RCC because I wasn't confident. A very good learning experience. So I look for that as well to, are they confident in their abilities? Um, and then last one, which is kind of subjective, but like, just are they a good person? I think if you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, sometimes if you have those amount of people in a line, like, are they all going to gel well with each other? Is there going to be drama during the season? And that kind of stuff. So those are like the big key things I look for. Sound quality, I don't really look for in an audition only because I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time in the 3 days, and everyone comes from such different backgrounds that I don't feel like it's really worth it to teach it for like 20 minutes and then judge it. I think whoever makes the line, they're gonna get months of just sound quality time. So I think it's just better to try to hone in on like kind of the other skills that are a little more important at that time. Um,
That's super interesting to me because I think you guys sound great. And so to know that there's that much teaching that goes on, during the season, I think is really cool, and hopefully takes away some of the intimidation factor for people auditioning too. But.
yeah, it's gonna be different between groups. I know two groups that do put sound quality in terms of their like it helps them with their decision. If like two people are close, they'll go with the one that sounds better. But in all my years of teaching, I don't think I've ever I don't think sound quality has decided this person is going to make it apart from this person, unless we're talking about like maybe high schools. So I think that's another thing too, where depending on the level in which you're teaching, the context is going to change. Um, I just I've been with RCC for a bit, so and that's just what I'm used to now. But in high school, those standards kind of changed. I think, are they going to show up is really a big one because if they're going to be flaky, that's going to suck. And are they down to learn? Are they down to kind of struggle a little bit to go through it because learning symbols is always like way more difficult than someone who's way more experienced.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I guess the follow-up question to that is, do you have any recruiting strategies for anyone? How much do you do for that to get people to the door?
Um, Honestly, that's probably something I could do better about. I try to talk to people during the season, like at shows. If they come watch, I'll watch them, or I have friends who are techs and I'll watch their lines and blah blah blah. Sometimes I'll give lessons to people, so I kind of have that networking a little bit. But um honestly, the best I try to do is just make the line good and make people want to come. I think that's the best thing in terms of recruiting. Um that's the easiest, not that's not the easiest. That's the simplest way to recruit. Um I think, getting your asking a lot of people, and if you teach a lot of high schools, like you're gonna get a lot of people under you and they're gonna want to try to go out and maybe march and stuff like that. But um yeah, I think the easiest interaction is just the human one. You see them at shows, hey, good show, like what's your name? Talk to them a little bit. I think that's the easiest way to at least, build a connection, then maybe they'll want to come and join your line or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Do any panelists want to chime in on that at all? Mason, go for it.
Yeah, something I really focus on in the off season is actually recruiting. Like at Cap City, just to let other people in our process. We have like a giant recruitment doc that we call it, with like everyone's emails, phone numbers, like social medias, and like I really just try to leave the door open to whoever is going to come audition. Just hit them with a message like, hey, I saw you had an interest, or, I see that you play cymbals. What is your plan for this winter? Just a simple question. Like, you don't have to push anyone in any direction, but just, that first message, especially for a kid that has maybe never done this is talking like the independent world level, could really just help like nudge them like, hey, maybe I'll ask a question or just download the packet, or, just send a message back like, no, I found a home this winter. That's as easy as that to me. Is I'll send a Facebook message, an email, just like Instagram DM. You don't have to be pushy, but also I think social media is a big presence. If your indoor line has a good social media account, the kids are going to see it. And then if you post these really good and clean clips and these awesome things, kids are going to see that and want to do it. This is speaking on the independent world, like higher level. Your high school, you just kind of sometimes have to take what you can get and have a good time. I've taught some high schools like that. But for me, it's social media and just honestly reaching out to a kid, just shoot that message.
You never know. Sometimes they don't know how tangible it really is. Um, Well, I want to ask the next question for Jerry. He has a lot of experience teaching high schoolers, and also college band too, where, the level is just very different. So the question we have for you, Jerry, is how do you go about motivating symbols, or motivating students that may have been cut from a drum or other instruments, to try symbols out? And what are some of the ways that you keep those newer students interested and engaged?
Yeah. The biggest thing is just reframe the opportunity. Instead of treating symbols as a fallback, you emphasize their importance to not only their musical impact, but the visual impact that they have for a group. So many times in my experience, students get moved to the cymbal line and they enjoy it so much, they'll stick with cymbals for their whole marching career, which is always cool to see. But if you could foster, a team identity, I know we'll talk a little bit about the cymbal culture and developing that. That's a big part of it as well. Uh, Keeping, let's see, newer students interested and engaged. Um, Show them what's possible. Xavier kind of mentioned it too, but I'm certain everyone here decided to pursue music and their instrument because they've watched some sort of prestigious groups do it. So keep them hungry. Show them videos. That's how I was inspired to do it, watching the great ones do it and wanting to do that myself. Band is great because of the memories you make and the friendships you gain and the camaraderie, but like being the best at your craft is a different feeling. Winning feels good. You almost have to approach it with a certain arrogance, but if you approach it in a way where I want to be better than my competitors, you start to develop a character that bleeds into everything else that you do as a cymbal player. You don't get a score for putting your cymbal bags down in a straight line, but you do it anyway. You don't get a caption award for walking in step to the food truck, but ultimately this starts to build some of that culture that others will talk about. So as the kids say, lock in, uh, lock into what you're doing. And I don't want to sound like a buzzkill because I enjoy band as much as the next person, but you got to ask yourself, are we putting too much focus into naming our section mascot, or are we cleaning our flip ups? When students start to see success in their scores and other sections start to see the cymbal line as the hardest working section, they start to become more engaged with what they're doing. So.
Yeah, could not agree more. We want to obviously inspire the next generation as best we can. This kind of leads to the next question. This one's for you, David. Kind of designated this question to you because he didn't mention it, but David's also a designer. He writes a lot of body. I think you've written drill before too. Is that correct? Yeah. And so this question is, when writing music for cymbal lines or visuals too, what are some things that composers and arrangers should keep in mind in terms of full ensemble moments, section features, and what are the best ways to communicate that to the design team?
I really like this question a lot. So as far as like from the musical aspect, contrary to popular belief, there are more sounds than just crashes, crash chokes. For these ensemble moments, crashes, crash chokes, tap chokes, those are all great for that kind of thing. That's going to emulate that big, loud sound that you want. But there's just so many softer timbres that, as cymbal players, we know of, bell taps, scrapes, and all that stuff. I almost like to think about it of like, I teach at the scholastic level, but regardless of what level you're working with, the students are paying for tuition. They're paying for this experience. Might as well use the whole cymbal. Just kind of branch out with, if you have those softer moments, those are opportunities to throw in those different sounds. So you have just a wider color palette with what's happening. And even like other section features, it could be a bass feature. If they're staged behind there, if you have the cymbal staged behind there, just throw in some really soft sounds that kind of line up with maybe what the accents are playing, or you can throw in a visual throughout there. There's just lots of opportunities that you can use with cymbals to not necessarily if they're like the moments, but just to make that moment just kind of like have that more flair to it. As far as cymbal features goes, it depends on the moments of the show that you're looking at. You can have features within those like big, fast, aggressive moments where you just want to ram all the hi-hats in and stuff like that. You can have a cymbal feature and a ballad. You can make beautiful sounds with this instrument, contrary to what people might think. And then kind of like Chelsea, what you mentioned, how that ties into what I do mostly as a choreographer and staging. Staging is obviously a big part of it. If you're on that visual design part, you don't necessarily want to have everybody spread so far apart that creates just a weird listening environment. You want to think about just where they are in relation to maybe not even just the pulse pocket, but for the front ensemble in the indoor setting. You want to set your performers up for success, that kind of proximity, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Does anybody want to chime in on the musical aspect at all? Josh, go for it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely agree with everything David said. One of the things when I was always writing cymbal music, and I think a lot of music writers will tell you this, no matter what genre, whether it's marching or otherwise, it's just by listening to music and being inspired and constantly finding things to inspire you. I used to listen to a lot of drum set players to get those different colors and textures. Like Terry Bozzio was a big favorite of mine back in the day. He had this album again in the 1900s, Blacklight Syndrome. He had this cool lineup of cymbals, Radia cymbals that Seavine produced that were all pitched. So he had like melodic cymbals, and he had like 50 or 60 cymbals on his drum set. It was insane. And I just remember listening to those colors and that album so much just to understand what I can do harmonically with cymbals. And it's pretty fun. There's a lot of great drum set players out there. There's a lot of great music where you can listen to the drum set players. There's a wealth of session drummers on YouTube. You can get on like Drumeo, places like that, and hear drummers just drumming, and you can hear what they're doing texturally with cymbals. So with music and writing music, it's listening to music and being inspired by what artists are doing, and then what kind of stuff can you bring in to our genre of music playing, i.e. marching cymbals, and how can you make those colors happen in our world. It's pretty cool. So that's all I have to say about music.
Nice. Well, I think it's safe to say we all love cymbals because it's the musical contribution, but also the visual contribution as well. So this question is for you, Jaden, but what is your process for crafting a sequence in a show? Who writes the music? Who writes the visuals? Yeah, how does that work?
Yeah. So I'll start with the music portion, right? And usually, the big thing with cymbals is what does it mean for cymbals to be incorporated within the ensemble, right? So process is still the same, right? The battery coordinator or the arranger, whoever's putting together the music, right? That score is going to be already prepared and presented to the cymbal line. A big thing that I also think about, right, is, and this will lead into the visual creation process, but those musical implements, there's also periods where, the arranger might ask for advice, right? With maybe a moment heavy with, the snare drummer's playing a bunch of shots. Maybe then in the part, it's got presses in it. Might make sense then to change it to tap chokes to line up better with what we're hearing from like a timbre standpoint of what the snares are doing. Because it's imitating a similar musicality, right? So those are just some things to think about from like a musical standpoint, but right at the end of the day, whatever is arranged, that's usually something that's outside of what you create as a cymbal player. But when we're talking about the visual creation process, that's where things get more interesting, right? We oftentimes write, directors, they may not be familiar with working with a cymbal line. So the biggest thing is, from a visual standpoint, it's on the cymbal line to design their book for how it relates to the rest of the show, right? Where, as mentioned before, an arranger would prepare the snare book. The cymbals will have their music ready, but you need to still fill out the rest of the book with visuals. So what that process usually looks like is, you get together with the cymbal line and start to talk about, what kind of visual ideas do we want to put in here? There's different things that you can look for within a score, right? But at the end of the day, right, first working with the members to figure out, okay, what kind of visuals do we want to put here? Start to brainstorm some ideas that would work best within this moment. An example might be if there's a bass lick, right, going down the line, that might be a moment to add a visual that's a ripple, right? So just some things to think about when designing. Another example, right, we used the example of a snare drummer doing a shot. That might make sense to add a staccato visual, right? So those are just some things to think about. And then combining both of those together, right? So you have the visual side and the musical side, but what would that also look like tying it together? So there may be a visual, right? We'll use like a sizzle, for example. where the sizzle is moving from this plane of your body to another plane of the body, right? Or maybe you're doing a juggle and the juggle goes into a tap choke, right? So the big thing there also, right, is you have the musical, the visual, but then also tying both those together to create some of those cool things that you're seeing out there now.
Yeah. So, I mean, all that to say is, referring to the musical score while you're writing the visuals is a really nice way to have your visual and music effect really line up nicely. Um, since we're talking about visuals, let's get into a little bit more of something nitty gritty. This is for the Midwest East Coaster mostly style, but I definitely have seen some stuff on the West Coast as of recently. But this one's for you, Mason. But what are some of your best tips and tricks to break down juggling techniques? And maybe you give a little definition of exactly what, cymbal juggling is too.
Yeah. So cymbal juggling, I think this is kind of a new visual technique that has kind of come into the game. Probably as a like a new standardized technique. Honestly, I think Chelsea's like Seavine code education or whatever that is. Like I use those videos to teach my high schools personally. So if you need help with them, I would definitely check those out because it helps with the names and it helps just with how to break it down. But in some of my more higher end world class ensembles, we're generating juggles that have never been even named before. I kind of attest it to like, if you just played a new rudiment that had never been played before, like you really don't know what you're doing. So I usually break it down into three, roughly four steps, most of the time just three. You have like the way you set it up / your starting position. Hey, there it is. Check the chat for the link. So first part of the three, you have your setup. Like how is this juggle being set up? Do you set it up from the bottom of the cymbal, top of the cymbal, left side, right side? Is it thumb led, pinky led? And then you have some sort of juggle or rotation that happens in the middle of it. And then you have a third part that is usually the catch, not hitting the ground, catching it. So that's kind of where you begin to isolate the three parts of it, in my opinion. And just breaking it down step by step before you try to string all these ideas together is usually what I do with my cymbal lines personally. It's super important to break it down in those three steps, in my opinion. I always use the comparison of climbing a ladder. Like you can't jump to the third or fourth step. Like you'll never catch the juggle if you don't know how to set it up and move it correctly. So it's cool if you catch it, but in my opinion, it's not clean until we set it up the same way and juggle it the same way. So they like coincide together. If you don't set it up well, you're probably not going to juggle it well, and then you're probably not going to catch it well unless you're just really lucky. And then another tip I usually say is like the direction change / juggling part where it leaves your hand or your hand is just barely scraping the cymbal and motivating it. It doesn't need as much force as you think. Because with physics it starts to spin faster. Usually when it spins faster, it goes towards the ground faster. And you just don't have enough time to like calculate in your eyes and in your hands to feel what's happening because it's just spinning out of control. So really trying to slow it down and maximize the control, then you can really feel what your cymbal is actually doing instead of just throwing it and hoping you're going to catch it. Slow-mo videos also help if you're developing a juggle that's never been done before, or you can slow-mo those videos that Chelsea made for this cymbal community we have. So the three-step process, that's what I use personally.
I love it. A pro tip I'll say, even though you didn't ask me, is to put a cushion underneath your cymbal so they don't hit the ground.
We definitely do have one at Cap City. I know I've seen the Rhythm X cymbal and used one before, but that's important because they will hit the ground, as much as we don't want to hurt the instrument because they're fragile, and with enough velocity, they will break and crack. So putting something to cushion it, I remember in my marching days, we used to put our feet like underneath a mattress and then you would just drop like directly where your foot was, so anything to brace the cymbal and just help it not break because they're really expensive. So let's try to minimize the breaking.
Some people are turning over in their graves right now. I'm going to change the topic. Um, this one is for you, Polly. What are some of the most common technique mistakes that you see in cymbal lines? And what are some of your tips and tricks to correcting them?
I will say when I saw that photo with the pad in front to catch the cymbals, I was like, oh, that's smart. Because I would be every now and again, an ensemble is traveling from one place to another, and a cymbal gets dropped by accident from the front or from the cymbal line, and it hurts. So the pad, very smart. Anyways, most common technique mistakes. As I was thinking about this, I kind of had a similar idea to something that X alluded to, Xavier, sorry, alluded to earlier. Um, that kind of gives like a really big tell on someone's control, which a lot of technique involves control, is how they're able to maneuver the cymbals with their body. I feel like that gives away, like he said, someone's maturity in terms of their performance level um, right away. Because not only does that include the sounds that you're playing, but it also includes any visuals. So this could include crashes, any auxiliary sounds that take a lot more finessing than people realize. Um, Visuals, making sure that your hand is in the exact right angle. You think you're at blades, but you're not. You're actually showing the insides. Super common there. I would say to become more specific for crashes, I think one of the most common things, and this takes a lot of time to develop in your muscles and your body, is it's that fast hand speed that really fast hand speed going in because the prep is very relaxed. And then without laying all the weight in, and also without getting into the nuance of crash techniques, since there are various techniques out there now, just getting that fast hand speed because if you're slow, it's going to sound bad almost no matter what. You'd be lucky maybe if it sounds all right. But then you also need that fast hand speed and that control to not only flip, to do one count movements, for any releases, if you're locking back from a full crash. So getting that really like fast twitch. You'll hear in exercise science like fast twitch muscles, like sprinters will use. That fast twitch and that control is kind of like what X said, it's really going to show someone's maturity playing wise. That awareness, I think, is kind of the biggest giveaway. So without those things, you have some more technique mistakes to work through still. Everyone has their own habits to get through. So it's going to be a little bit more individual. Every person will approach things a little bit different. But you'll definitely start to see different tendencies, slow crashes, telegraphing movements, not only marching wise, but with your hands too. Not catching the cymbal fully, which will give a lot of ambiguity, a lot of bleeding from movement to movement. It's not as clear or crisp. And all of that kind of just boils down to your body awareness. You can increase it by practicing more. It takes time. You're not going to get it right away over months or years. Videos, kind of like what Mason said. You could do a slow-mo video, you could have a regular video and then just scrub through every single second of it. I'd be surprised if not everybody's done that. You go through and you're like, oh, that's off, oh, that's off, oh, that's off. And not necessarily in a way to tear yourself down, but to get to really see what's happening because our eyes can only see so much. And so that's a really great way to break down and see every single little technique thing. As a student or as a teacher, you can coach them to do that as well.
Takes a lot of patience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, this next one is for you, Josh. Thanks for your patience. But this question that someone submitted says, As a percussion teacher with zero marching cymbal experience, what are some ways to approach teaching marching cymbals in your ensemble? And I asked this to Josh specifically because I know he currently runs and has run in the past full drum lines, as well as instructing the cymbal line directly.
Yeah, I mean, I ran into this. I run into this a lot. I run into this a lot judging as well. I love this question. With judging, I judge a lot of bands from like Southern Oregon and Northern California, rural counties where they don't necessarily have drum instructors. It's just a band director and maybe a dance coach. So I think about stuff like this quite a lot. And kind of the stuff I give to them, I'll give them a big wrap up on their tape. And a lot of it's usually about finding resources first and foremost. Like if you don't know something, you have to go find the knowledge yourself if you're going to try and convey that information to students. Like you have to possess that knowledge, so you need to go find it. So a couple easy ways, obviously, would be like the Seavine website. Zildjian has a great reference and a lot of resources there as well. I know I did a search when I started doing this panel, when I found out I was going to do this. I looked at all the sort of independent world drum lines, and a lot of them have cymbal audition information, and they have their cymbal packets online. You can read through that sort of stuff, and that's a lot of good information there. Just to sort of take in and consume what's happening in the cymbal world. Currently, that's the modern sort of techniques. And then you have to create boundaries for yourself, because if you're not a cymbal instructor, you're obviously not going to have them go out, hopefully, and try and do what Mystique or Rhythm X are doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't limit your consumption to just that sort of upper echelon type of stuff. Maybe look at what the PSA groups are. Who are those groups? Like, what's the 10 through 15? What do those cymbal lines look like? What does it look like in my region? Like, where's that sort of standard? So kind of don't create like false expectations. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a lot of information, but I want my kids to look like Rhythm X. Why are you doing that? You're setting yourself up and your students up for failure. So come up with realistic boundaries and realistic goals and sort of decide on a technique. Make it really simple. You can come up with one crash. I don't know if you still call it orchestral or whatever. You can do one. Dartmouth's a great example of this. Dartmouth High School. They don't have a lot of like variation. I see them warming up a lot, and they do most everything down here, which is pretty simple for everyone to grasp onto. And it's a more relaxed position that doesn't require the stamina and strength as like, I think we call it port now. I don't know. I don't know what people call it these days. But up here, that requires a lot of strength. And maybe if your eyes aren't always going to be on your cymbal line, give them something that's a lot easier to handle work-wise and workload-wise. So you're not just killing out your students. And then, what else did I get into? I wrote down a lot of things. This goes into, I was watching your video early today, Chelsea, about warming up your cymbal line with your battery. And if you're just a battery dude and you happen to have a cymbal line, create a warm-up packet with your battery. Don't send your cymbal kids off to go do something just because you don't know what to do with them. Again, they're still rhythmic, they're still percussive instruments. They still have rhythmic responsibilities on the floor and then the percussion ensemble. So you can clean them rhythmically. You can give them your bass drum exercises if you're like a small high school, like a rural high school. Give them your 8 on a hand split and do like hi-hats and maybe find 2 other sounds that they can work on. Or they can do it with just basic crashes and come up with an exercise for them so that they're included in the drum line. You're not isolating them, and you're really conveying to them that like they matter, that they're worth it, and they're worth understanding. And kind of be honest with them too, like let them know like, hey, this is a new for me thing as well. So we're going to discover this together. So if you go find information that I don't possess, bring it to me and let's like figure out how we can incorporate that. So we make it more of a communal sort of thing. So it's kind of, oh, and a big one too that I put down, find a mentor. With in the age of social media, it's very easy to reach out to anybody on this panel, anybody that's in your region. Say there's an independent line like in the city nearest you. Reach out to that cymbal instructor, and hopefully they're cool enough. I would think that they would be, to be like, oh, this person's reaching out, they need some help. What information can I give them? And if somebody reaches out to any of you and asks that same question, give them the homie hookup and be cool about it. Just know that it takes a lot for people sometimes to ask for help in those situations. So be cool about it and help them out and help grow the thing. And I think that was all my notes for this. Yes.
Heck yeah. Anybody else want to chime in on that at all? That was a lot. Love the idea. Samesies. Cool. Xavier, you're up. You're next. There's a lot of physicality that goes behind playing cymbals. It's obviously something we've all had to learn to embrace over the years. Um, but Xavier, do you want to talk about maybe some best ways to just generally build strength as a cymbal player?
Yeah. I think uh I think the best way just to build it is just to do it. I think there is not a lot of one-to-one replicas of like symbols to something else. The closest I've come to is rock climbing. I'm like really into indoor bouldering, so that's like a new discovery of like how to use your body and use your hands. But not when I was a member. That's not what I was doing. But um, I think the more hours you can get on the cymbals, the stronger you're gonna get. I do think that as an instructor, you should make it clear as to, what kind of regiment that they should have, or even ask them like, what do you want to look like? Um, and usually they'll say, a various amount of groups or people, and then you have to be like, well, if you want to look like that, then we got to put the work in. I think it's up to the members during the week to be putting that work in, so you're not having to struggle on rehearsal weekends. Um, so it's a two-way street, right? Like I think as an instructor that you should I don't want to necessarily say like make them tired all the time, but like if you have people who are struggling with holding the cymbals, when you're teaching technique or you're doing reps and stuff, like just have them hold them a little longer before you give the relax. Because like that extra 5 seconds over the course of 12 hours, like 5 seconds extra every rep is going to add up in the long run. But I think during the week, they should for sure put the cymbals on, practice, hold them for as long as they could. Um, but I think the next best thing is to be efficient with how you use your body. I personally wasn't a very strong player, I would say. I think I struggled. I was kind of a scrawny, underweight kid. Um, so when I did Academy in 2016, it was very hard for me to keep the cymbals on and do that thing all day. And my tech, Travis, he was telling me that I have to be efficient with how I use my energy so I can, match with people who maybe just have the raw strength to just, you know, hulk it out for 12 hours or whatever. Um, so I had to learn very quickly how to use different parts of my body to support doing something or streamline some things where I'm like maybe I'm losing a little bit of efficiency here, I'm being a little too tense here. How can I stack my how can I stack the weight better so I can hold it for longer? If that gets tired, what other muscle can I use to compensate for that? I think teaching that as you do rehearsals and stuff is only going to help them as well. I say always you should work smarter so you can work harder, and that way you have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, for sure. I Once you get over that hump, it's such a nice feeling too, when the strength part is just less of an issue, as you're trying to execute your book, especially.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
I think one thing to
Polly.
think about.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
Jaden, go first, then we'll do Polly.
yeah, one thing that I also like to preface a lot when I'm teaching is the physical side, right? It's there's a lot of physicality, but also just realize there's a lot of mind games when it comes to holding your cymbals. A strategy that I did when I was marching, right, and this is where the muscle memory would come in, is just almost zoning out that feeling of the physicality side of it, right? And that just comes with more time. The one thing I really like that Xavier was saying, right, is just holding the cymbals, right? That's like the biggest way you're going to figure out where you can work the system when it comes to the physicality. Like, can I use this different muscle in my body to achieve the exact same effect?
Yeah. Polly, what were you gonna
Yeah,
That.
I was gonna kind of touch on a bit of what X said and a bit of what Jaden sort of started on. Well, I'll do Jaden's part before I forget. I think the question is obviously for the physical side, but the mental component is just as big because as your body gets tired, your mind will start to go. So making sure that we're breathing. I find a lot of people, and especially intense auditions, will start to hyperventilate and tense the rest of their body, but trying to relax in positions as much as possible outside of block, I found really helpful, like for the building of your performance and everything. Drum corps especially might have done this in indoor, I can't remember. But at the end of the day, do a full mental run through of your show. It doesn't exert energy, which is great, so that helps the physicality side. But if you mess up, you have to start over. And having joined the season as a member for Vanguard late, there was not only a lot of mental catch up, but a lot of physical catch up to be done there. And um, women, females probably build strength a little bit differently. I majored in exercise science, but I'm no medical doctor. Women tend to not be as strong in their upper body. It's still totally doable. We're doing the shows at the same level as the guys. So gals, we're capable. Don't worry. It takes a little bit more time to get there. And I find that it can be hard. It can be discouraging for students sometimes. What went a long way, and as a teacher, you can help facilitate this, is to instill trust in all of the members and say that you trust each other, you believe in each other. So if one person, whether it's a guy or a girl, is struggling with their strength or their mental aspect, as long as they're trying their hardest, if they have that strength between each other, it'll help uplift everybody. Hold with your back too. Oh my goodness, it's not just your arms. Your good posture. Everybody, I think I spent like a day in 2018 in the summer just thinking, oh, I should try and like bring my shoulders back. Not so much that you're like pushing your chest out, but bring it back just a little bit. And your back has larger muscle groups, so they're going to work more efficiently than the smaller muscle groups. That exercise science that's there. So if we're able to hold with our back and our posture upright, I know Vanguard super, super guilty on this lean back to try and displace the weight. It makes sense, like physics wise, you lean back, the weight's a little bit less, but having that nice upright posture, holding with your back, don't lean back, especially in the upper positions you want to so badly. Um, yeah, it all, and like X said, it all stacks up. But yeah, it
I
takes
think I saw everybody, including me, start to like sit up a little straighter when you
I know.
started.
She hit us
I was
with a
like,
yeah,
oh, I
posture
am
check.
slouching.
it
I
makes
know.
it makes such a difference. OMG.
Everyone push your shoulders down right now.
Yeah, who doesn't have bad shoulders right now?
Oh man. Um, cool. Jerry, this next one's for you. I think this one was super interesting. The question is, what would you say is one of the biggest things that you notice now as a teacher and even a spectator of Symbol Lines that you never really thought of as a member?
Yeah, I see this a lot, in especially the scholastic area. Uh, Consistency and control matter more than flashiness. I know that's maybe hard to hear sometimes, but clean execution, relaxed playing, and timing control outweigh some of the crazy visuals sometimes if they're not locked in. Um, if you're attempting a visual that 2 out of 5 symbols get consistently, then it's time to make some decisions. So a lot of the stuff we do is like we enjoy it for the microcosm of the symbol world. How often do we hear judges comment on symbols? Not as much as we'd like. They don't know all the ins and outs of all that stuff. So again, maybe make some decisions on that. The audience is impressed by the simplest things sometimes. A fast and clean ripple to vertical will blow people's minds. They love it. Um, we talked about body mechanics and injury prevention, those kind of things are stuff you don't really think about when you're marching. Uh, I would argue that playing cymbals is the most physical instrument. Yes, quads are heavy. Yes, bass five is heavy, but what we ask cymbal players to do uh, is as physically demanding as it gets. So um, just make sure you're doing the right stuff because longevity and performance is key. Um, Another point, uh, as a member, you're usually just focused on your section, but as an instructor, you need to balance projection and blend and articulation with the battery. As it was said earlier, cymbals are a musical instrument, so you got to keep that in mind. Um, and then just a strong team dynamic and good leadership within the cymbal line can make or break the experience for students too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Something you mentioned, just taking care of your body, and I see what I mean. I see it on the weekends what the cymbal players are doing, and um, thinking about your hands and the finite muscles, stretching your hands and whatnot. That's definitely things that I couldn't have gotten away with as a member now, is not doing those things, you know. Um, all right, this one is for you, Jaden. Cymbal players sometimes have different needs from the rest of the drum line to be successful in rehearsal and show setting. Um, how can you advocate for what your cymbal players need as an instructor, without making the cymbal section feel isolated or too different from the rest of the battery?
Yeah, so want to reiterate, I don't know who said it before, right? But the big thing, I actually it was Xavier, right? When you're saying the cymbal line, a big thing is, what is the vibe of the line? And what that vibe of the line usually dictates what the cymbal needs are going to be, right? You have the generics, right? Needing cymbal gloves and all that stuff, but really tailor your needs based on who is on the line, right? Um, Before diving into that one, though, tailoring it back to from a cymbal tech standpoint, where I've seen a lot of success in ensuring that the cymbal line is set up for success. And this is what Joshua was saying earlier is, it's that connection that you have with the director, and just open communication. Something that we do over at GMU and even at Crossman is we have weekly calls, um, you know, with the battery caption head, just going over the agenda for the week. We'll be staging this. We'll be doing on the floors for another portion, and then cymbals. You have subs during dinner time, and that open communication really sets us up for success from a staff standpoint to tell us, okay, so we have 3 hours of subs. We can use this time to brainstorm a chunk of the book. We know we need to clean H through I, and we also see later in the week. One of the chunks that we're cleaning on the floor is H to I, right? So having that open communication with, the directors and the rest of the staff, just in alignment with schedule, really helps you as the staff shape, what you want to hit for that weekend, and what the cymbal players are going to need, whether it's filling out the rest of the show or cleaning a specific part.
Yeah, does anybody else want to talk from a cymbal tech perspective about, advocating for your line? Yeah, X, let's go with you. We're on nickname basis now, I've decided.
Let's go. All right. Advocating, I think Jaden said it pretty well, where it's like knowing your director. I feel like it's really easy to just be on our own and then despise everybody. And and then just be like, well, they don't like us, and then not make an effort to actually connect with people, or like at least get to know them so that so you can explain, what you need, or they may be more comfortable to ask you and that kind of stuff. Um, I think, yeah, definitely talking to your directors, definitely talking to other staff. Um, it will help. I will say though, I think one thing that I've learned a lot is just picking your battles. I think as an early instructor, I wanted to fight everything. Everything that they did that was wrong, I was like, this is dumb. They hate us. They cut all of our notes and that kind of stuff. I don't think I realized how much that bleeds or how much the members can see that in you. All it takes is a couple comments, offhand comments during rehearsal. All of a sudden they're on board and it's not good. So I think picking your battles uh is definitely super important because if you try to fight everything, then it doesn't really matter at that point, really. Um yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of us have learned that the hard way too. Um, cool. Well, moving right along, we had a lot of questions about symbol culture. And I'm gonna designate these at least to start to Mason and you, Josh. Um, but just kind of generally about symbol culture, what are some ways to establish the symbol culture in your group? Um, we also had people internationally ask this question too, where kind of the marching arts aren't thriving maybe as much as they are here currently. And I think it translates continent to continent as well. But I think both of you, I mean, everybody on this call, if we're being honest with ourselves, but with you, Mason and Josh, I think you've kind of established this sort of cult-like following within your students, especially looking back at like the Oregon Crusader days. Josh, for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, he was teaching like the same cymbal players for like 7 years, and like
Forever.
lots of them never
Forever.
left, or when they did, they already had like 7 seasons under Josh, and then they're like, oh, I'll just go march three more somewhere else. I mean, just kind of an insane following. Mason has that at Cap City as well. I mean, those cymbal players, they don't leave, you know. So why don't, Josh, you want to start with this? Talk a little bit about, I don't know, your sensei vibes with culture.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good time. I mean, we were starting something from scratch with OC Indoor, and I think a lot of people, that's kind of what we do as cymbal techs when we walk into new gigs. Like, say it's like a high school that's trying to start a cymbal line for the first time, or say you're lucky enough to be at the early stages of planning an independent line. And so I know for Oregon, we didn't really have a cymbal community whatsoever. So it was kind of like making it up as we went. And I think for me, a lot of what I did was, again, it goes back to just like knowledge is power. And I was, um, and again, at that time, this was like the early internet days. It was past dial-up. I'm not that old, but like it's pretty close. Uh, um, I was kind of looking at what was out there, and I just knew I wanted more information. So I started talking to people. I just started reaching out to people, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'll just start asking people questions. And so I actually put together this history thing. I talked to people coast to coast, starting back from like the 60s, going all the way up to like early 2000s at this point, and just trying to connect the dots symbol wise and creating that evolution. And so I would show those early OC kids, I'd hand them this like 30-page packet, and like 9 of those pages were just like symbol history. I'm like, this is what you're connecting with. Like, you're not the first person to do this. You're standing on the shoulders of all these people, and they've created this whole pathway and gone through all of these things so you could stand here in this gym in Oregon and be great at this one thing that you're going to do. And so what are you going to contribute to that legacy? So that was kind of where I started from, and it felt kind of heavy, but it's what we did, and Oregon kids like that sort of stuff, so it was fine. It's a very ponderous sort of region. It's what we do. We're kind of nerdy and thinkers. I think anybody that's worked with some of those Oregon boys knows that's kind of what they're like. Um, so that's what I did, was really kind of uh, lay heavy the weight of the community that they were joining, and tapping into that, and then showing them videos, taking it all the way back to like, this is what it was like in the 70s with dudes like Mike Braga carrying like 26-inch cymbals and like doing all this crazy stuff and like the handles, and the all-girl cymbal lines, and then when did straps actually become a thing, and then showing them all these old drum corps that used to have cymbal lines, like the Blue Devils and Garfield Cadets and all that sort of stuff that they had no idea was actually a thing, and just showing them that evolution and that they were connected to something much bigger in this brotherhood and sisterhood. And I think it was a really beautiful way to sort of indoctrinate the kids early on with that sort of rhetoric, that what they were doing was important, and there was a lot of people that loved them for what they were doing and the instrument that they were playing. Despite what some people may say about our instrument, hundreds and hundreds of people have done it and done it well, and they're part of that legacy. So what do they want to do with it? It's kind of where I started from, and I'm going to turn it over now so I don't talk forever. So
Well said, Josh. Very well said. Just for myself and my own cymbal programs, I just think having like defining a core value and just setting goals with the kids is like first just where you have to start. You know, if they don't know where they're aiming, then like there's really no point. Like even from my scholastic group that I teach during the week, I start the block and I say, all right, guys, here's the two things we're gonna work on. And if we have time, we're gonna work on this. You know, so like they want to do it because they want to get better. Everyone likes getting better at stuff, you know. So I think just setting like the goals for the day and also the goals for the season, and then you have to hold them accountable, you know, because like it's not fair that if they said, "Hey, I want to get really good at this skill set," and then 2 weeks down the road they're not being good at that skill set, like you need to point that out to them and be like, hey, this is when you need to start improving and this is where you need to improve it on, you know, because if you don't hold them accountable to the goals that they set themselves, you didn't set this goal for them, they set it themselves, then why are we here? You know, like what are we getting better at? Just holding metal against gravity, or are we learning about ourselves and setting goals and doing that? And I think when you do that to your students, they want to stay with you because they actually see the progress. You know, like you have a short-term goal of I want to make my flips better, and then by the end you have a long-term goal, and you just check in with them and communicate, especially at the independent world level. Like the kids are really smart. You know, they're smarter than, you know, maybe I want them to be, but they're really freaking smart, you know? So they know when you're full of it. You know, like you can't fake it. So just having that love and passion and holding them accountable keeps them, you know, because if they see that fakeness, they just leave. You know, they'll go march somewhere where they actually care about them. You know, like I show up to the staging blocks at Cap City because I want my cymbal line to be successful, even though I'm told not to go. Just because I'll stand there for 2 or 3 hours and just make sure that, you know, they feel comfortable and that, you know, I'm advocating for them. It kind of goes back to what Jaden was saying about advocating for your kids. You know, if they see you doing that, they'll stay with you. You know, if you get pushed over and don't care and don't put a ton of energy and love and detail into this, then they'll just leave you. You know, and I think about playing cymbals way too much. Probably like honestly, like 10 hours a day, I feel like. I'll be at work like typing these emails for WGI and I'm like, oh my God, I remember what I said to that high schooler yesterday. Oh God, we gotta wrap this like when our rehearsal today. You know, so it's like just put a lot of love and care into it and they'll stay with you and love you back.
can I add two more?
Yeah, join in, Josh.
Yeah, so like with that, like I like the whole thing of holding them accountable and setting goals. And I've gone into high school groups not intending to be like working with a cymbal line, just sort of overall, and making sure if you're working with this class group, if you're a younger cymbal tech, that you're bringing that same fire and energy to the group that say like the snare tech is, or the bass tech, or the quad tech. Like you shouldn't be any lesser than. Make sure you're getting after your students with the same amount of passion. Like sometimes I'll walk in and the cymbal tech will be just chilling, and it's like, okay, I guess you're not holding them to any sort of standard. So make sure you're up in there as well. And then also, like I know with OC, we celebrated the community that we were a part of, and like one of my big goals was to always be friendly and chummy with all the other groups. Like it wasn't an us versus them. I mean, there's always like a little bit of that in the independent world because like, you know, winning is fun and like there's a certain point where you're like, yeah. But like ultimately the goal was to create a big community. So we'd start to see those videos come out and you'd be like, what's Mystique doing? What's Rhythm X doing? What's RCC doing? What's Pulse doing? And like, yes, you're like, God, yes, they're fine. And that would be cool if we like beat them by 57 points and they got relegated to percussion scholastic A or whatever. Like that would be rad. But like at the same time, you wanted to celebrate them and show them that like we're doing the same things. And the cymbal world is such a small, unique microcosm and such a small, unique microcosm. Like there's not really a lot of room for the us versus them. Like it really needs to be a totality, like a community sort of thing. So it was still all about celebrating while maintaining that competitive edge because winning is cool and like being great is a good time. But again, and that goes to that history and tapping into something bigger than yourself, making sure you're always aware and cognizant that you are part of like a whole is my thing. Anyway.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons we're doing this roundtable, is to just kind of break down these barriers. At Seavine, we try and summarize our goal for the year with one word. And, 2 years ago it was approachable. So, we started the Discord server. We're doing an event like this, where, I mean, in what world does a Cymbal Tech from the West Coast and a Cymbal Tech from the East Coast find themselves, on the same panel sharing knowledge? Um, I don't know that it has happened. And if it has, it needs to happen more. So I'm very thankful that everyone here is so willing to share their experience. I'm going to leave you guys with a book resource and then we'll jump into the next question. But a book that I love is called The Power of Moments. I'm going to drop a link in the chat. And the book is about how you can turn somewhat mundane things into these very memorable experiences for people. So, for example, the person who worked for me and dog sat for many years. Instead of just handing her a key to the house, we rolled out the red carpet and put velvet ropes out and gave her a glass of champagne and put the key to our house in a jewelry box. We could have just handed her the key to our house, but we wanted it to be something very special and memorable. And I've used this book a lot to help my students set goals. The first question that I ask them is, what are your two, what are the two most powerful moments of your marching career? What are you the proudest of? And if you know what makes them proud, then you know that there's something that you can do. You know what motivates them, and then you can recreate those special moments for them. If it's competitive success, if it's a meetup, it's whatever the case might be. Um, and yeah, highly recommend it. I have a list of goals too that I give to all my cymbal lines that we sit down and talk about. If anybody's interested, shoot me an email. I'll send it to you. Um, cool. Well, anyways, moving on. We have just a couple more questions, and I have a couple special things I want to share with you guys at the end. This next one is for you, David. You are still a cymbal tech at heart and still actively teach, but you're also, of the designer level. And someone asked, how did you get to where you are now as an instructor? So if you want to share that with us, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. So as far as kind of the, I guess, visual designer side goes, I've kind of found that just within like being a cymbal instructor, it's been really helpful to kind of have, for lack of a better term, that side gig, especially if for a lot of people who are, wind players who see cymbals as kind of the gateway into the percussion world. I found that in my fall programs, I'll come on as a, visual instructor, visual caption head, kind of move up within there. And then these programs will start to create an indoor percussion program. And then they'll say, hey, can you come on board to do the visual stuff for this? And I say, yeah, absolutely. By the way, I also teach cymbals. If you are looking to have a cymbal line, I found that has been really helpful because those students who are coming from the fall program who are, looking to try this new thing, they're already familiar with you. They're already familiar with your teaching style. So especially for, young up and coming cymbal instructors, There's also a lot of crossover that I found from, especially with visual, because I mean, cymbals is such a visual heavy thing. Learning that body awareness, teaching that body awareness, um, both in the marching band and indoor settings, that applies directly to kind of the things that we teach of just, learning angles, learning flips, like move your body in this way, it's going to feel like this. Um, but even from the wind player perspective, because most of my kids are all wind players, there's just so many crossovers. You can be like, hey, we play with, a flam crash. You get that front of the note. That's the same thing as with your primary instrument. That's the ta syllable. We choke the notes on this count, just like you're getting the note to go to this length right there. The more of those kind of just crossovers you can find within what you're teaching, it just it gets rid of that kind of like fear from the students. It's like, oh, I can do this. I know these concepts already. As far as symbols go, though, one of my biggest things has been don't stop practicing. Even if you are an instructor, don't stop practicing. Don't stop learning. Like, we joke about old man hands and the activity and stuff like that. I still pick up my cymbals. I'll just stand in front of the mirror and just, yep. Just, checking into those things, keeping your fundamentals up. The sharper those are, the more comfortable you're going to be when it comes to teaching them, as well as diagnosing common tendencies that you see in beginners. And like you get those, we talk about in teaching the light bulb moments, especially in visual or in the drum course setting, where it's, the students start to figure things out. You can still have those moments as an instructor, as an educator, like especially when it comes to flips. I might have taught something one way for years, and then I'll just be on my own in my room, just flipping up to vertical, flipping up to gumption or wherever, and just like, I've never thought about how it feels like this. I'm going to try that tomorrow, in our subsectionals. And then don't be afraid to learn new skills. But by the time I aged out, juggles weren't really a thing. And I don't really tend to do those much with my beginner lines. I'll still learn them just for the sake of keeping the love of the craft up. And, you can even come in to a subsection like, hey, look at this. Want to try to learn this? Like, I think the last one I learned was a foop in the shower. I learned a foop in the shower. Didn't know I could do that. Another big thing, just like what Jaden and X were talking about, advocating for your section. Like as an instructor, within reason, you always want to be advocating for them to have the best experiences possible, not just as performers, but as musicians. And as far as just where I am now as an instructor, to those beginner instructors, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. You might throw in a visual and be like, that wasn't the right one. That's not the right one for that moment, or that is too hard. Every time it sucks, but every time that's an opportunity of like, okay, I know the wrong way to do that moving forward. Now I know I'm going to try something different. Another thing I found, I think Jaden might have touched on this quickly, meeting students' needs individually when it comes to either symbols, visual, or just teaching in general. Everyone's going to learn a little bit differently, but the more you can like work one-on-one with your section, especially in a smaller section like symbols, you are fostering an environment where the culture is to help each other out. And I think that really boils down to being the instructor that you would have wanted as a beginner. Outside of that, communicating, networking with your peers in the activity. I think just last year, we were trying to learn like a little figure eight sequence or wad burners, whatever you want to call those. And for the life of me, I just, couldn't figure out like, how do I put this into words? How do I explain this? And just call up my friend who's teaching at another program. Hey, how do you teach these? We actually met up at a show, asked her that. She's like, oh, I lead with the pinky for this one. I was like, should have thought of that. Yeah, and I think was part of it's like prioritizing exercises and visuals. Was that part of the question too?
Uh, let me see. Oh yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
A
But
bit?
yeah, go for it.
Okay, sure.
If you want, I don't know. I think honestly it's super interesting just kind of career-wise where you've landed too. Because I mean, band is what you do, and you've gone through so many versions of yourself between mellophone and cymbals and content creator and cymbal tech and visual designer and so on and so forth. And I'm sure the best is yet to come still. So I think people sometimes, there's nothing wrong with being a cymbal tech. I have no desire to be a designer. But I also think it's so incredible that people get their start from cymbals, and they learn other skills that then make being involved in the activity so sustainable, like it is for you. Um, just for time's sake, I want to get to the last question. And then like I said, I have a nice little wrap up for everybody. Um, we're going to start with Polly. This question was really for you, but I want to give everybody a chance to give like their 30-second synopsis on this. But basically, like, where do you see the future of cymbal playing and the activity going in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years? And what do you think we need to continue growing? Polly, you get a minute. Everybody else, let's kind of stick to 30 seconds, and then we'll be right on time tonight.
Like when I read it, I was like, this is like the meaning of life question.
Yeah, I know. Special one.
Yeah, the first part, I feel like we're at a little bit of a tipping point. A lot of groups are either most of them are just cutting lines. Like we don't really see a lot of new lines coming out. So I feel like we're really at a tipping point here. Um, Fewer and fewer on the West Coast. I'm not as in touch with the East Coast. I think you guys generally have more, which is great. Um, for people regionally this way, we could use some more. Luckily, the indoor scene is still pretty good. But for the community for the next 5 to 10 years to continue growing, kind of jotted some things down. I feel like something that a lot of higher groups, some do, some don't, clinics. I know RCC and Pulse do them. I think sometimes drum corps do them. I'm sure there's some East Coast indoor groups that do clinics. That's where students are going to be able to learn more than in an audition. An audition is like a test versus a clinic is where they're actually receiving the information. This is something, I'm not on staff with SCV, but I'm friends with a lot of the staff. I feel like this is something that the Vanguard community and the style more specifically could really benefit from. The audition is not necessary. You're going to learn, but it's not necessarily for learning. We're evaluating the best of the best players. So if we wanted a greater audition pool to have clinics throughout the summer, in the fall, in the spring, at some other point in the year, that would really bring a lot more education to the community. We kind of talked about like people being cut and then ending up on a cymbal line. That is a great way to build the community. I was cut from bass drum at Gold, and we had a brand new, like all of us in 2017 were brand new, and a lot of us went a lot of different places, but we're all very successful. And so you never know. It's not a downgrade. I think Jerry said, or somebody said on that topic, it's not a downgrade. It's just a different avenue to get to marching. There's still so many opportunities there. You could play mellophone and then go back to cymbals like David. You could play cymbals, go back to a different instrument. You could take the full trajectory of cymbals like I did, and just really run with it. Chelsea, I love your worksheet. That's something that I don't really teach at the high school level anymore, but something I always wanted to do is have a worksheet at the beginning of the season, really flesh out your goals, because some kids want to be really good and some kids just want to have fun, and to find that balance, especially at the high school level. Because independent, everybody wants to be good, pretty much. So getting those goals lined up. You can also do virtual clinics. I did a virtual clinic once with several Latin American countries, so bringing it really global. I know we have a couple international people in this panel, or in the audience as well, so that's really, really cool. So things like this bring the community to grow. That might have been more than a minute, but I had a lot of awesome ideas from everybody on this panel, so thank you.
No, you're
Sorry.
great. Thank you. Who's next? You get 25 seconds, whoever's next.
I'll go. I think we just grow at a very exponential rate because of the way communication is in the world and technology. Like information just gets shared so quickly compared to like making a smoke signal and trying to get better that way. Like emails, videos, text messages, whatever. Like the information gets shared and the baseline grows because of it. And something I've been saying to my Symbolons this year, because I've been just trying to change the way I do things personally, because I don't know if I've gotten stale or I think I got stale. It's like greatness doesn't come from settling. So let's look at our process and let's try to be better and do something different rather than just settling and being okay with what we're doing right now. So
Love it. Who else? Some final words.
You can go.
David,
Oh,
then you, X.
I think
got
as
it.
far as the future goes, I think accessibility is a thing that we will hopefully see just increase of accessibility to information. We have Seavine.co where you can learn all these new visuals and stuff like that. There's books that people can get, but even just technology wise, like using the slow motion camera, there was a point where that was not a thing that people just had in their pockets, and now it is one of the most crucial tools that we have when it comes to learning visuals and things like that. Who knows what we can get moving forward? First thing I thought of is VR glasses, wearable technology that will eventually find its way into this activity and changing the ways that we learn, finding more efficient and also just cooler ways that we grow this activity.
X, you're up.
All right. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, I honestly think we're in an age of information. I think a lot of things that when I was a member was just do it this way. And I think now there's so much info that I think if in the next 5 to 10 years, I think we're gonna see just execution tests of everything. I think we're gonna see like a lot of ideas just be done at such a high level. It's already happening now, I feel like. But I think the thing we need to do to grow, I think I mentioned this on the Flip Up podcast, shout outs, Jaden, was just talk about symbols, theory craft. I talk symbols for hours, and I get a lot of ideas from different people. I think things like this are great. I think talking to your homies about symbols, I think doing that stuff is only going to help us grow. Um, and I think that's going to help it be also just more enjoyable. I always find it fun to learn new things about symbols.
Absolutely. Jerry, Josh.
Yeah. To piggyback on a couple of those points. Some of the same things, just technology. I'm fortunate with Seavine. It's kind of a labor of love, but every WGI finals, I filmed the symbol lots, and I think last year we had like a record 125 videos that I helped film and edit, and it's a labor of love, but it's great to be able to contribute and have that as a resource. And I'm hoping that just continues to grow every single year. We get some more videographers to help me out. But I think technology and accessibility to the craft is ideal.
Jaden, and then Father Josh, you get to close us out.
Perfect. If you think back, right, being in the symbol activity now for over 12 years, I think. I remember high school me just being like, all this cool stuff, right? Like, when it came to like doing unloads and reloads and like the early stages of juggling to like where symbol playing is now. This activity is always going to be evolving, right? I even joke about this with the current GMU symbol line and Crossman, right? Is the things that you guys are doing now, although I just aged out 3 years ago, like I can't keep up anymore. So this activity is constantly growing. I don't think it's ever going to fade away. When we talk from what we see in DCI, right? Lines are getting cut, but I think the biggest thing we're seeing now, and I'm sure Chelsea, you can vouch for this, right? It's the culture that's being incorporated with cymbal lines. A lot of these directors now want to bring their cymbal staff because they love the way they're incorporated with their ensemble. So that's something to think about. And the last thing I'll leave you guys with, if you are a current marcher right now, I think the biggest thing I could tell you is I can't tell you the number of times people have chosen to self-cut themselves from auditioning somewhere because they think they're not good enough. I'm telling you, that is the reason why this activity either goes stagnant with the way it grows or it grows at a slower rate, is because a lot of great potential auditionees who are sleepers, they don't take that risk of going out to audition because they see the people that are auditioning are, 3 years of doing this, 2 years of doing this. Just put yourself out there, reach out to anyone, right? We're all more than happy to help you reach your goal.
100%. Josh.
I can't believe you called me. What'd you call me? Father what? Oh my God.
Father Time, I think, is what I said. Just
I gotta
kidding.
go take a nap. I don't think I have time to answer this question. Crap, I got time. My mashed potatoes are burning. No, stupid. 5 to 10 years. I mean, since I started marching, like again, the 1900s, like it's changed so much. The fact that this is happening, like it's crazy. Everything, like Chelsea, I've been fortunate enough to kind of hang with you since like the early days of this, and just to see how much this has pushed the community and the culture forward. It's just been mind blowing. It's still a little bit frustrating that one thing I would like to see is just more how do I put this? More respect given to our little community by percussion caption heads, by the other people teaching other sections. Like we're more than just prop movers. We're more than just, 5 extra member fees in the coffers. Like we're a whole ass thing. We're incredible people that have goals and passions and that sort of thing. So getting that respect, I think that's something we can still work on. And I think the serious and professional nature of things like this is contributing to that. And I think just from like an audience member and somebody that like gets to adjudicate cymbal lines is just the same thing happened in the battery world when Vanguard started doing the Mahler thing in like the early 2000s. People, like a lot of the younger groups, started skipping steps. And I think that's happening with a lot of the younger groups. Like they're seeing all the juggling, the foop and whatever the hell, whatever that was, poop in the shower. I hope you all saw my faces when you said that, because oh my goodness. Like don't skip steps, especially with the younger group. If you're teaching like a younger group, like make sure you're focusing on the primary what a cymbal is. It's a percussion instrument and it's a music maker, it's a sound maker. So make sure that focus on sound and sound quality and musicality are first and foremost, especially with your beginning lines. Like I can't tell you, like it's really cool seeing like some little whatever group come out and they're just like doing all the stuff like that. And then they go to do a crash and it's just like 5 air pockets, but they don't care. They're just like hyping it. And it's just like, this is the worst thing ever because you're still responsible for making music. We're music makers too. So I think in 5 to 10 years, and I've already seen it at the higher level where you're doing all these crazy things and the crash that you're coming into from these crazy positions are sounding really incredible. Where it's like when this stuff was happening like 6, 7 years ago, that crash didn't necessarily sound so great, but it looked cool. And I think we were all willing to forgive at that point. We're like, doesn't sound great, but like, did you see what they did? Like, come on, that was pretty cool. And now I think we're like, yeah, you did that thing, but like it sounded like not so great. And I think people are starting to do that. So again, I talk too much, so that's kind of what I would like to see. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the thing I'll add is that, I don't know, when people say the cymbal community is dying, I'm like, you're crazy. It's not dying. Like, maybe the only place it's not thriving is drum corps, but, you know, everywhere else it is. And drum corps is such a small section of the marching arts in the reality of it all. It's thriving in WGI. It for indoor. It's and marching band and from the scholastic level and high school and colleges. You'd be hard pressed to not find cymbal lines that continue to grow and evolve and have higher demand. So. Um, I always laugh when people say cymbal lines are dying. I'm like, they're not dying. We're thriving. Look at us. Look at all these things we're doing. It's so cool. And are the bass drummers and snare drummers having panel discussions like this? I don't know. I hope that they do. We're really not special. We we have the same opportunities that everyone else has. We just have to make them for ourselves, you know. Um, a couple things as we wrap this up, if you can hang tight for just another minute. I'll say a couple logistical things before I say my thank yous. Jerry mentioned videographers. We still need a couple videographers for WGI finals. So if you're an experienced camera person and you want a front row seat to the Seavine lots, there's a form. It's in the link in our Instagram, or you can send us an email, info@seavine.co. And let us know if you're interested. If you have someone you want to recommend, please do so. Um, we will do this again. There's a ton of people spectating this discussion that applied to be on the panel, and that means so much to me that you guys still wanted to contribute and be here for this. It was so difficult for Carly and I to narrow this down. Genuinely, everybody that applied could have been on the panel. There's so many wonderful people in the cymbal community. But I am obviously very thankful for our first seven to be here and help kick this off. I think we're going to do another one. I know we're going to do another one, probably post WGI, and maybe we'll make it kind of reflection based from the WGI season and give some of the indoor folks a stage to talk about what they experienced that year. Um, I'm very appreciative, obviously, to have the platform of Seavine. But as I said, we always want to be approachable. So if you have an idea, whether it's small or big, we'd love to hear about it. We might not always say yes, but we do want this to genuinely feel like a community effort. So just, always feel like you can reach out to myself, to Jerry, to Carly. She's the keeper of the inbox typically, and fields a lot of the great questions and suggestions that come through the Seavine avenues. Which a big thank you to Carly for organizing this event. Everybody could air clap for her. She did all the nitty gritty to organize this, and was definitely part of the enthusiasm when we were brainstorming ideas for 2025. So thank you, Carly. And lastly, on Friday, Seavine turns 10, which is insane. The cymbal gloves are over 15 years old. Uh, Josh and Jerry were some of the cymbal techs that first adopted the cymbal gloves in their infancy to fund our scholarship, the Cymbal Scholarship, which is still going very strong. I think we've given away over $35,000 to DCI and WGI cymbal players. Um, Yes, and I can't take a lot of credit for that. It's funded by your guys's purchases of our products. So as long as that keeps happening, the scholarship will keep happening. Um, I cannot believe it's been 10 years. I feel so unprepared for Friday. Um, Jerry and I have been looking back at old photos and stuff, and it's insane. But all that to say, we are trying to make 2025 feel like this big celebration. It'll start on Friday. We'll have a little discount code, which I'm going to tell you guys now. It's use discount code anniversary, 10% off site wide. But more importantly, we just want to reflect back on all of the incredible things that have happened, but also really our style is to look forward and keep dreaming up, what the next thing is going to be. We have tons of video projects in the works, events galore between WGI. We do want to host some educational clinics. Seavine staff has evolved to be full of lots of cymbal players. It hasn't always been that case. We've had some funny quad drummers and trumpet players infiltrate at times. But it's really cool that the staff is also capable of teaching some of the best. So if you guys ever need anything, please do not hesitate to reach out. I cannot stress that enough. Like me, Jerry, Carly, Tomas, there's not many other people that make Seavine go round during the year. It's really kind of the four of us. So chances are, if you email Carly at Seavine.co or Jerry at Seavine.co, it goes to those people. So if you know our first names, you know our email addresses. Um, uh, and lastly, again, just a huge thank you to the panelists for dedicating your time and not keeping any secrets from the cymbal community. It's so cool that you're so willing to share your experience and knowledge, and that you're all still active in the activity in many different facets. So, um, thank you guys. Please check out our 10th anniversary. It will go on for the rest of the year. We have big stuff planned for WGI finals, so please come by the booth. You might see if you were ever a Seavine cymbal player, you might see a photo of yourself somewhere in the booth this year. So there's going to be lots of artifacts around and cool things. So um, I think that's it. I will stop babbling on. So thank you guys. And until next time. Bye.
Thank you all for the amazing panel.
Yes, panelists, I can't thank you enough. You guys are the best. I can't wait for the next one.